Hi, in this video, we are going to discuss about peripheral neurovascular assessment. Neurovascular assessment is performed to detect early signs and symptoms of acute ischemia or compartment syndrome. Example of injuries or procedures that place patients at risk for neurovascular compromise include limb fractures, crush injuries, any external fixators, casts, splints, vascular injuries, and procedures, at last, circumferential burns. Components of the focused neurovascular assessment, potential risks, and implications of neurovascular complications are presented in this video. Let us go into the complete details of the assessment. Before going into the components of the assessment, let us have definition of certain terms. Neurovascular. It is the structure and function of the vascular and nervous systems in combination. Musculoskeletal. It includes a combination of muscles, bones, and joints. Capillary refill. It is an assessment of arterial blood supply return, which is performed by briefly interrupting blood supply in the capillary system and timing how long it takes for the blood to return. Disproportionate pain. Pain that exceeds what is expected post-injury surgery, which is not usually relieved by analgesia. Muscle compartment. Muscle compartment is a well-defined space in the body that consists of a group of muscles in a particular segment. The muscle compartment is bound by fascia. For example, the lower leg contains 4 muscle compartments, whereas upper limb contains 3 muscle compartments. Next is the fasciotomy. It is a surgical incision made through the fascia and into a compartment due to increasing pressure. The aim of fasciotomy is to relieve pressure, so to improve peripheral neurovascular status and prevent long-term complications. Next, compartment syndrome. It is an increase in pressure of a closed muscle compartment that causes muscle and nerve ischemia. Active movement. It is the ability of an individual to voluntarily extend and flex an extremity or digit. Whereas the word passive movement indicates assessor able to extend or flex an extremity or digit of the patient, where patient require somebody else help to move the part of the body. Next, we'll see criteria for neurovascular assessment. Patients who require neurovascular assessment include the following, but are not limited to only these conditions. Musculoskeletal trauma disorders include fracture, crush injury, application of plaster cast, restrictive dressing, application of traction, which includes both the skin and the skeletal traction, or use of splints like Thomas splints or baby frame. Burns patient, especially patients who is having circumferential burns and signs of infection in the limb. These are all the conditions which require the careful assessment of the neurovascular assessment. Other conditions which include postoperative patient, of internal or external fixation or fracture reduction. Other orthopedic surgeries such as spinal surgery, plastic surgery on extremities or phalanges, patients who is undergoing cardiac catheterization, or any type of procedures which require tourniquet application for long period, or application of plaster cast. Following the plaster cast application, that may compress the muscle compartment, leading into the compromised blood and the vascular supply. The last indication for neurovascular assessment is the any kind of restrictive dressing. Next, we'll see how frequently we can perform the neurovascular assessment. Usually, following any injury, surgery, or after the application of cast, neurovascular assessment can be performed every 1 hourly for the first 24 hours. Whereas after 24 hours, for the next 24 hours, that is 48 hours after the procedure or the surgery, assessment can be performed for every 4th hourly. Suppose if there is any deviation in the baseline observation, then assessment has to be performed more frequently. Next, we'll see how this neurovascular assessment who's undergoing the cardiac catheterization. Neurovascular assessment should be conducted on the affected limb with routine post-anesthetic observation. Then with every set of observations we make on the catheterized limb, the assessment has to be performed. Sensation and motor function should be assessed appropriately according to the affected limb. With each set of neurovascular observation, the puncture site should be assessed for bleeding or oozing, color, warmth, and signs of infection. This assessment must be performed along with the routine assessment indicated for the patients who had underwent cardiac catheterization. Next, we'll move on to the procedure of performing neurovascular assessment. Neurovascular assessment is comparative one. That means the assessment performed on one limb has to be compared with the other limb. The unaffected or normal limb serve as the reference point for the affected limb. The unaffected limb should be evaluated to establish a baseline prior assessing the affected limb. Hence, prior to assess patient's neurovascular status, we need to ensure that the nail polish, any kind of dirt, blood, or any stained skin preparation is removed from the distal extremities to make the assessment more clear and accurate. And also the jewelry of any kind to be removed from the injured limb, as it may cause constriction due to expected swelling. And there should be the full light is necessary to perform the neurovascular assessment. Let us have a look on the components of the neurovascular assessment. Neurovascular assessment basically includes 5 P's, which include pain, pulse, pallor, paresthesia, and paralysis. And we also can include pressure, cold, pain, and passive stretch, along with this 5 basic components of the neurovascular assessment. Hence, the neurovascular assessment of the extremities is performed to evaluate basically the sensory, motor, and peripheral circulation. Let us have a look on each of these components in detail. So before going into the complete assessment of these 5 components, we should keep in our mind that the comparison of assessment findings bilaterally is extremely important. Unless the unaffected or normal limb is evaluated, comparing the affected limb findings is become difficult, because even the subtle changes can have significant implication in the prognosis of the patient. So nurses need to remember to include neurovascular assessment findings of all extremities in their documentation, and that has to be notified to the appropriate healthcare provider or the doctor or physician in charge. First, we'll look into the first component, that is the pain. Any deterioration in the neurovascular status of the patient will be manifested as pain due to sensory nerve damage and diminished blood flow. This neurovascular damage pain will be indicated by pain which is disproportionate to the severity of the injury or level of the injury. There will be a deep, localized and extreme pain which will be unrelieved by analgesia or pain relieving measures. And the pain will be increased upon passive stretch of the involved muscle. How to assess the pain among the neurovascular damaged patients? Always assess the pain level of patient by asking them to rate the pain on a 0 to 10-point pain scale, where 0 indicates no pain to 10 indicates the worst pain imaginable. Suppose if the patient is having dementia or cognitive impairment, consider the use of PAIN-AID, that is pain assessment in advanced dementia tool. After assessing, record whether there is any pain at rest or pain on passive movement of the extremity, particularly for the affected muscle group. Pain sometimes may indicate the development of compartment syndrome. So even these subtle changes should not be neglected among these kind of patients. After assessing pain and administering analgesia, make an assessment to record whether the pain relieving measures has relieved the pain. Suppose if there is no relief of pain, then we have to suspect the development of compartment syndrome. Always remember to assess location of pain, radiating to other parts of the body, duration of pain, frequency of pain. Did pain relieve at these situations, like giving rest to the body, administering the medication, or position changes? If there is no relief of pain after these measures, think about development of compartment syndrome, and adequate treatment measures has to be initiated as early as possible. The second component that we need to assess is the pulse. And we all know how to assess the distal pulses. So always assess upper extremity peripheral pulses and lower extremity peripheral pulses bilaterally to make comparison. Be sure to assess for the presence of pulse distal to any injury that serve as the neurovascular status of the affected extremity. Use a 0 to 4-point scale to record the pulse, where 0 represents absence of pulse to 4 represents strong and bounding pulse. When we assess the pulse for the first time, use a marker to indicate a pulse palpation site when there is a difficulty to locate the site. Once we mark this site, This will help others for making the subsequent assessment, and there will be a consistency in assessing the pulse. If there is a difficulty in locating the pulse manually, then consider using Doppler scan to assess pulse. Suppose if the extremity is having POP or cast and it makes difficult to assess the pulse, we can assess all other parameters. If everything remains within the normal range, then we can consider pulse to be normal. Document if there is a change in the pulse detected and notify the healthcare provider. The third component we need to assess is the capillary refill. Measuring capillary refill helps to evaluate the arterial blood supply to the small peripheral vessels, as the capillary bed is the furthest portion of the vascular system from the heart. Assess capillary refill by pressing on the nail beds to evaluate the peripheral vascular perfusion. After applying pressure, note how long it takes for the distal capillary bed to regain its color or causing blanching. Capillary refill time can be affected by age, temperature of the body, ambient light, and the amount of pressure application. So these parameters or these factors should be considered when we interpret the capillary refill findings. Capillary refill time of 2 seconds or less is normal for an adult, whereas prolonged capillary refill time can indicate abnormal perfusion. Note how long it takes for the nail color to return. Suppose if it is less than 2 seconds, we can take capillary refill is brisk. If it is 3 to 4 seconds, slow capillary refilling. If the refilling takes more than 7 seconds, then we have to mark it as the sluggish refilling. This interpretation and recording is very, very important to assess the neurovascular status of the affected extremity. The next component we need to assess is the skin color. When comparing the unaffected extremity with the affected one, normal skin color indicates adequate venous return. That means if both the extremity are having normal skin color, then we can say both are having adequate venous return. If the colored extremity could indicate hyperemia or inflammation, inadequate arterial supply or inadequate venous return could be suspected. Compare the color of the unaffected limb to the affected one. Consider the patient's usual skin tone or any skin conditions when performing this assessment. Sometimes cyanosis can present differently in different skin tones. So always compare the finding with the baseline skin tone and the skin condition of that particular patient. Identify the color of the affected limb, that is natural color, or the color is pale or white, flushed or red, dusky or cyanosed, because this has interpretation of different condition. If the color is red, then we could interpret as hyperemia or inflammation, whereas normal skin tone indicates normal color or normal vascular supply. If the color is pale, it indicates inadequate arterial supply. Mottled skin color indicates inadequate venous return, whereas dusky, cyanotic, mottled, or purple-black coloration indicates inadequate venous return. And shiny and pale skin indicates compartment syndrome. So note these color changes and record in the patient chart appropriately. The next component of assessment includes the temperature. The skin temperature of the extremity can be indicative of venous congestion or diminished arterial flow. Use back of the hands to assess skin temperature bilaterally. Skin should be warm to touch normally, whereas cool skin may indicate inadequate arterial supply. Warmth may indicate inadequate venous return or development of infection. So need to be very careful when you are assessing the temperature of the patient body with the help of the backside of the nurse's hands and monitor and interpret appropriately. Compare the unaffected limb to the affected limb. Record the patient's skin temperature as hot, cool, warm, cold, or clammy. Because the temperature of the extremity may indicate as follows. Hot one indicates venous congestion, or it could range from warm, cool to cold, which indicates diminished arterial blood flow. Next component is the sensation. Ask the patient about changes in sensation such as tingling, numbness, that is paresthesia, where the patient will experience the pins and pricks, pressure or burning. Sometimes a pressure sensory exam often consists of assessing light touch with a cotton swab or assessing temperature discrimination with warm and cold stimuli or using pin prick with the sharp end of the disposable safety pin to measure the sensation of the patient. If patient is having complaints of numbness or tingling in the extremity, it should be carefully investigated immediately with the assessing proximal and distal site of the injury or surgery. Nerve involvement, compromised blood flow, or the use of ice can alter a patient's sensory function. The steps we need to follow in assessing sensation include: ask the patient to close his or her eyes prior to assessment of sensory function. Test each nerve-related area using the tip of index finger. When testing sensation, the location of numbness, tingling, or pricking must be determined to indicate distribution of vascular compromise or nerve damage. We need to carefully assess the location where these kind of sensations are present, because each nerve distribution site will vary. So we need to assess which site is being affected and interpret which nerve damage is present. Assess and record the nerve sensation as normal, pins and needles, or absent sensation. Avoid using sharp objects unless it is indicated. So these are all the sites that we need to assess in the upper limb. That is, for the radial nerve, always assess web space between the thumb and index finger, including dorsum of the hand. To assess the median nerve, web space between the thumb and index finger, including the palmar surface of the hand, to be assessed. To assess the ulnar nerve, assess between the little finger and distal ring finger on palmar and distal surface of the hand. So we need to carefully assess which nerve site is affected and interpret the damaged nerve. Whereas lower limb sensation assessment includes two common nerve endings that are peroneal nerve and the tibial nerve. Peroneal nerve assessment can be made on the dorsal surface of the foot, whereas tibial nerve sensation can be assessed over the plantar surface of the foot. This is the sensation assessment in the upper and the lower limb. Next, we'll see motor assessment. Assess range of motion and strength. Here, we need to assess the patient's ability to perform any specific movement, which will be a key indicator of motor function carried out by specific nerve endings. Because loss of motor function could be a late sign of neurovascular compromise. Hence, we need to make frequent assessment and careful attention has to be paid to find out these subtle changes in the patient as early as possible. Coming to the assessment of motor function, test the active and unassisted movement initially rather going into the assisted movement. If a patient's active movement is impaired or absent, then we have to think about making the passive movement and to interpret the findings. Whatever the movement we assess, that has to be investigated and document the reason for impaired or absent active movement. Whether this active movement can be temporarily blocked by nerve block or it could be limited by pain. So we need to identify what is the reason the patient is not able to make the active movement. Notify the medical officer for the appropriate specialty if there has been a decrease in the motor function since the previous assessment. Assess and record movement as full movement, impaired movement, or absent in comparison with the unaffected limb as active or passive movement. Next, we'll see motor function assessment in both the upper limb and the lower limb. In the upper limb, three main nerve findings are radial nerve, median nerve, and the ulnar nerve. To assess the radial nerve, make the patient to extend wrist and fingers at the knuckle joint, that is at the wrist. Suppose if there is POP or cast is applied over the hand, then this can be assessed by making the patient to extend the fingers. Next, to assess the median nerve, assess the patient's ability to bring thumb and little finger together so they are touching. The ability to touch the thumb and little finger is being carried out by the median nerve. To assess the ulnar nerve, ask the patient to abduct all fingers. These are the three nerves can be assessed in the upper limb. Coming to the motor function in the lower limb, again, two common nerves which could be assessed in lower limb are peroneal nerve and the tibial nerve. Peroneal nerve can be assessed by dorsiflexing ankle and toes, whereas tibial nerve can be assessed by plantar flexing ankle and the toes. These are the 5 nerves in the upper and lower limb could be assessed to interpret the motor function of the affected extremity. Next, we'll see about edema or swelling. Edema can result from musculoskeletal injury, which could contribute to vascular compromise, or further it can damage the muscle and nerve tissue. Sometimes the pre-existing diseases such as heart failure, cirrhosis, or kidney disease can place a patient at increased risk for edema-related complication when they undergo musculoskeletal injuries or surgeries or any constrictive procedures. Here we need to think of elevating the limb no higher than the heart level, which could help to decrease edema. Coming to the assessment of edema, compare swelling of unaffected limb to the affected limb. Assess and record swelling as nil swelling, small, moderate, or large swelling. Sometimes we may have to take the limb circumference measurement in monitoring the swelling. Whenever we make the circumferential measurement, mark the area where the measurement is taken. Hence, the further readings can be taken at the same site to make the appropriate assessment. Or we can use the edema scale to assess the degree of edema. So some additional information which will be important along with the above mentioned 7 component of neurovascular assessment include sometimes the patient may become nil comments, they will not respond, or the patient may be unconscious, or the language barrier, patient may be confused, or increased elevation, epidural spinal or regional block which could reduce their ability to respond to the assessment, or sometimes ice pack applied which could reduce certain parameters like warmth or swelling. So we need to think of these parameters when we interpret the above mentioned 7 component of the neurovascular assessment. If any of these factors are persisting, then accordingly the assessment findings has to be interpreted. After making an assessment, we also have the responsibility to educate the patient regarding the neurovascular assessment. Explain the importance of neurovascular assessment and why it must be performed in the affected extremity and compared with the unaffected extremity. Prepare the patient for frequent assessment if there is necessity. Unless contraindicated, tell the patient to move their digits regularly and notify the nurse if they find any pain or change to their extremities. So very well, the patient can be asked to move the distal fingers or the toes or distal part of the extremity to improve the neurovascular status if it is not contraindicated. After making an assessment of all the parameters, we need to carefully document the patient's findings in the chart. So complete the neurovascular assessment of the extremity that has to be recorded as defined by all sections of the neurovascular observation chart. Each hospitals have different type of neurovascular observation chart. So based on the component specified in the neurovascular observation chart, the assessment has to be done and it has to be carefully documented in each of the specified areas. And we can use separate form for each limb and ensure the correct form is used for the affected limb. Sometimes patient may undergo certain elective procedures and they also have to perform the pre-operative assessment which should be recorded as the baseline parameter. Hence, these parameters can be compared post-operatively. Patients requiring neurovascular assessment should have documentation in the integrated notes every 8 hourly or when there is any deviation occurs. If it has to be performed more frequently according to the institutional policy or condition of the patient, then we need to make the more frequent assessment. Each assessment we make should be documented with the date, time, and other specific characteristics of the documentation procedure. So this is all about neurovascular assessment. To conclude the neurovascular assessment, assessing neurovascular status of any affected part of the body is very, very essential. So early recognition of deterioration or compromise can be assessed. Many a time it will help to improve the patient condition or prevent the serious adverse effects. Neurovascular deterioration can occur late after trauma, surgery, or cast application. So we should not have the opinion that this will occur immediately after the injury, surgery, or the cast. Even at the later period, neurovascular status can be compromised. So hence, no assuming that the patient is having the normal neurovascular status. If there is any delay in recognizing neurovascular compromise, which can lead to permanent deficit, loss of limb, or even death may occur. So this neurovascular status assessment should be considered as the significant factor in improving the health status or preventing the serious complications. These are some of the references made to do